So, what if the absolute most effective way to understand your meditation practice is to, like, completely ignore all the philosophy, the gurus, and the mantras?
Right, which is a massive departure from how the topic is usually presented.
Yeah, totally. Because today we are looking at this really radical premise,
Yeah.
basically stripping meditation down to literally nothing but its raw underlying biology.
It's so needed because, I mean, for decades, meditation has been wrapped up in so much mysticism. It's layered with heavy jargon and
And so much competing advice.
exactly contradictory advice, even. It leaves a lot of people who are genuinely trying to learn just wondering what is actually happening underneath it all.
Right. And if you are listening to this right now, chances are you've bumped into that exact wall.
Oh, almost certainly.
You know the landscape. I
Yeah.
mean, meditation is everywhere. It's in corporate wellness programs. It's pushed by elite athletes. It's recommended by neuroscientists. But when you actually try to figure out what it is at its core, you are just hit with this tidal wave of noise.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
It really is. So our mission for you today in this deep dive is to strip away all that noise.
Hmm.
We're going to discover the absolute, universal baseline of meditation.
And to do that, we're looking at a really fascinating piece of source material.
Yes, we are.
We have the preface to a book titled The Science of Meditation. And, it is just the preface, but it lays out a foundational philosophy that completely upends the traditional approach.
Okay, let's unpack this because
Mhm.
the author establishes a premise right up front that just shifts our entire perspective.
Right.
We aren't going to look at how to meditate today. We are looking at what meditation actually is deep beneath the surface.
Which is such an important distinction because understanding the foundation, like the actual biological mechanism of a practice, is infinitely more valuable than just blindly following a list of instructions.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you understand the underlying mechanism, you aren't just a passenger anymore. You become the driver.
And the way the author arrived at this realization is actually highly relatable.
It really is.
They started out just like any of us might when, picking up a new habit by keeping a detailed journal.
Right, taking notes.
Yeah, they were logging personal notes, writing down their own meditation experiences day after day, trying to find some reliable pattern that they could teach to others.
But the problem they encountered is that the actual experience of meditation is intensely, just stubbornly personal.
That's so subjective.
Exactly. As they documented these sessions, they realized the subjective feelings varied wildly. Like during one session, a person might feel a profound sense of floating,
Right.
but another person doing the exact same practice might feel really heavy or incredibly bored or even, anxious.
Yeah, I've definitely been the bored and anxious one.
Right, so building a foundational theory on subjective experience is essentially building a house on shifting sand.
But I mean, if the experience is always different, then experience cannot be the baseline.
Precisely.
So the author realized that the only consistent, unchanging factor across all people, regardless of their temperament or their culture or their beliefs, is the biological nature of the event.
The biology is the bedrock.
Right. Think about it like eating a really spicy meal.
Okay, I like this.
Imagine you and I go to a restaurant and we both eat the exact same incredibly hot pepper. Our personal experiences of that pepper are completely subjective.
Oh, totally.
Like I might be sweating, crying, and basically rethinking all my life choices, while you might absolutely love the burn and ask the chef for more.
Right, because that subjective reaction is entirely dependent on our individual tolerance.
Exactly. But underneath that totally different subjective experience, the biology is identical. For both of us, the capsaicin molecules from that pepper are binding to the exact same heat receptors on our tongues
Yeah.
and triggering the exact same neurological pain signals to our brains. So the biology is universal, even if my experience is misery and yours is pure joy.
That capsaicin receptor is the biological truth. The tears or the joy are just the subjective derivatives. And the author is applying that exact same logic to meditation.
I do have to push back on this for a second, though, because I can hear people wondering about the spiritual side.
Sure.
If someone's core goal is spiritual enlightenment, or, they just had a highly profound emotional release during a sit, doesn't reducing it all to just biology strip away the exact meaning they were looking for?
That is a very common concern.
Like, is the author invalidating the personal experience?
What's fascinating here is that the author isn't invalidating the personal experience at all, not in the slightest.
Oh, really?
Right. What the author is doing is seeking a universal truth to serve as a starting point. By focusing purely on the biology, the author provides a grounded, really democratic foundation.
Democratic. I like that word for this.
Yeah, because it means that no matter your background, your belief system, or your personal history, the biological facts remain true for you. The author is not saying your profound spiritual experience isn't real. They are saying your experience is built on top of this shared biological architecture.
Which makes sense. But that biological baseline actually leads to a rather counterintuitive realization about the book itself.
It does.
Because if the biology is the only universal constant, the author explicitly states that this book does not teach specific methods or techniques for meditating.
Which is a bold choice for a book with meditation in the title.
Wait, yeah. Practically speaking, how useful is a meditation book that refuses to give you any actual techniques?
It sounds a bit backwards.
For a beginner, that sounds incredibly frustrating. It's like buying a cookbook that literally refuses to give you any recipes.
Well, it sounds frustrating until you look at the current landscape of information. As a learner today, you don't need another recipe. You are drowning in recipes.
That is very true.
You open any wellness app, and there are literally thousands of guided meditations. You are told to focus on your breath, or repeat a mantra, or scan your body, or stare at a candle flame.
Yeah, it is pure information overload.
Exactly. So by refusing to give you another to-do list, the author is providing the underlying code of how the machine works.
Giving you the code instead of the recipe. I really like that.
When you shift from the role of a guru to the role of a guide, the dynamic completely changes.
How so?
While a guru says, sit exactly like this, breathe exactly like this, because I said so, but a guide explains the mechanism. A guide says, here is how your nervous system actually responds to focused attention.
Let's actually talk about that mechanism for a second, because it's fascinating. Think of the brain's default mode network, the DMN, like a computer, running dozens of background applications.
Right.
You're worrying about a work email, replaying an argument from yesterday, planning what to make for dinner. All those background apps are just draining the battery.
Continually.
Yeah. So meditation isn't about throwing the computer away or achieving some mystical state of pure emptiness. It's literally the biological process of force quitting those background apps to free up processing power.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. Because when we talk about the biological mechanisms, we're talking about tangible, measurable actions.
Right.
Take the downregulation of the amygdala, for example. The amygdala is basically the brain's alarm system, right? It's constantly scanning for threats.
Keeping us stressed out.
Exactly. But when you practice focused attention, like just returning your focus to your breath, you are mechanically stimulating the vagus nerve.
And the vagus nerve basically acts like a brake pedal for the nervous system.
Precisely. By slowing your breath and focusing your attention, you are sending a physiological safe signal down that vagus nerve.
Wow.
And that literally turns down the volume on your stress response.
Right.
Your heart rate variability improves, your cortisol levels drop.
So it's not just a feeling, it's a physical change.
Yes. This isn't poetry. It is
Yeah.
plumbing and wiring. And once you know that biology, you can see what all those drastically different methods have in common beneath the surface.
You start to understand exactly which approach is best suited to your specific physiology.
Right. And you know exactly what biological benefits to expect.
Well, the author doesn't just stop at throwing out the physical techniques either, which I found amazing. They take this exact same ruthless, stripping away approach to the mind.
They do.
The preface makes it incredibly clear that the book intentionally ignores all the philosophical and religious topics that are usually derived from meditation.
Yeah, because usually the practice and the philosophy are completely entangled.
Right.
You learn the technique, and you are just expected to absorb the worldview that comes packaged with it.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the author's reasoning for ignoring the philosophy is brilliant. They argue that just like the physical experience, the philosophical reflections that arise from meditation vary highly from person to person.
So true.
Furthermore, the author states that most of these different religious or philosophical perceptions don't actually fundamentally contradict each other.
Right.
And this is the real kicker. Even when they do conflict, there is no right or wrong or deep or shallow to them.
That phrase, no deep or shallow, is so vital for the modern practitioner.
It fundamentally removes the ego from the equation. In a lot of spiritual or wellness circles, there's often this really subtle gatekeeping.
Oh, definitely.
Like, oh, my realization was deeper than yours, or my specific lineage holds the ultimate truth.
Yeah, it becomes a competition.
Exactly. But the author neutralizes all of that Nobody's realization is righter or deeper. It's just their personal, subjective derivation of the exact same biological event.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see why maintaining this neutral stance is absolutely crucial. We live in an era where people are just exhausted by dogma.
Yeah, they really are.
By divorcing the objective biological facts from the subjective philosophical beliefs, the practice becomes universally accessible.
Meaning you don't have to adopt a new belief system just to lower your blood pressure.
Exactly. You don't have to wear certain clothes, you don't have to use specific Sanskrit terminology, and you don't need to change your worldview. You can be a devout religious person or a hardcore atheist, and the biology of meditation will still work for you exactly the same way. It levels the playing field completely.
That brings up a really tricky dynamic for the listener, though.
How so?
Well, if we are stripping away the authority of the gurus, and we are stripping away the authority of the religious dogmas, how are we supposed to treat the author's own claims?
Ah, yes.
I mean, the author is presenting a book full of scientific concepts. Should we just trust them as the new authority?
The author actually anticipates that exact concern and provides a massive disclaimer right in the preface.
Oh, they do?
Yeah. They state very clearly that many of the opinions in the book, and even the quotes they pull from other researchers, should be viewed primarily as hypotheses and theories.
Okay.
They are explicitly telling the reader, do not regard this as absolute truth.
So they demand that the reader approach the text with a deeply skeptical mindset and be really cautious about the validity of the claims.
Right.
But in the exact same breath, the author says it is crucial to maintain an open mind. So how do you balance being deeply skeptical with being completely open-minded? Isn't that a paradox?
This raises an important question because on the surface, skepticism and open-mindedness do seem like opposites, but together they actually define true scientific inquiry.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Being skeptical means you don't accept a claim just because an authority said it. You demand evidence. You demand to see the actual biological mechanism.
Right.
But being open-minded means that when the evidence is presented, you are willing to change your prior beliefs, even if that new data feels uncomfortable.
To drive that point home, the author quotes the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. The quote goes, "All truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident."
That Schopenhauer quote perfectly describes the historical journey of meditation itself, particularly in the West.
It really does.
If you look back to the first stage ridicule in the 1960s and 70s, the idea that simply sitting still and paying attention to your breath could fundamentally alter your brain was widely ridiculed.
Yeah, it was dismissed by mainstream culture as mystical nonsense or just hippie counterculture.
Exactly. The scientific establishment wasn't taking it seriously at all.
Right.
Then, as more people started adopting it and early clinical studies began to emerge in the 80s and 90s, it entered stage 2. It was debated and sometimes violently opposed by traditional psychological or medical establishment.
Because they demanded rigorous mechanistic proof.
Yeah, they argued that any benefits were basically just placebo effects.
And today, we are firmly in stage 3. The biological benefits of meditation, specifically concepts like neuroplasticity, are literally accepted as self-evident.
We can now put a long-term meditator in an fMRI machine and physically see the results. We can see the thickening of the prefrontal cortex, which governs executive function and decision-making.
Wow.
We can measure the shrinking of the amygdala.
So the subjective experience of feeling less stressed was finally matched with the objective biological reality of a physically altered brain structure.
Exactly.
So the author is warning the reader, stay skeptical of new claims, but keep your mind open. Because what we consider a wild hypothesis today might be proven by the fMRI of tomorrow.
That journey from ridicule to scientific reality is the essence of progress.
Which ties beautifully into the author's own personal inspiration for exploring this topic. Towards the end of the source material, the author thanks their parents for their support.
Yeah.
But they note that their father was the very first reader of these scientific articles. And the father is a massive lover of Qigong.
That is such a vital detail because it bridges a major gap.
I was so fascinated by this overlap. Because through sharing these ideas with their father, the author had this incredible aha moment. They realized that Qigong and seated meditation are essentially the exact same thing biologically.
Even though visually they seem like opposites.
Completely.
Seated meditation, like traditional Zazen, is generally seen as this very still, silent, motionless practice. But Qigong involves deliberate, flowing physical movements synchronized with very specific breathing patterns and mental focus.
Right. If you only look at the recipes, they seem completely unrelated.
But because the author was looking through the lens of biology, they could see past the external choreography. Biologically and neurologically, they're triggering the exact same internal mechanisms.
That is amazing.
Whether you are sitting perfectly still on a cushion or moving your arms in a slow Qigong sequence, the controlled rhythmic breathing is activating the parasympathetic nervous system.
And the sustained mental focus is interrupting that default mode network we talked about earlier.
Exactly. They are playing by the exact same biological rules, just using totally different physical vehicles to get there.
When you know the biology, the external differences just melt away. And the father recognized this too. He wrote a letter to the author that is quoted in the preface, and it carries so much warmth and insight.
It's a great letter.
He wrote, "People's understanding of nature is still very limited at present. As long as you can break the superstitions about authorities and keep searching for the truth, you will make progress in the end."
That single line from the father really encapsulates the ethos of this entire exploration, the call to break superstitions about authorities.
Yeah.
That is what ties everything together. It is why the author rejects the physical dogmas of specific, rigid techniques. It is why they reject the spiritual dogmas of competing philosophies.
Right.
And it is why they rely on the Schopenhauer philosophy of truth. Breaking superstitions requires exactly what we discussed: a demand for biological evidence, coupled with a radical willingness to change your mind.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Yeah.
Well, it means that you can officially let go of the anxiety of doing it wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
Underneath the overwhelming variety of meditation apps, the ancient physical techniques, and the complex spiritual philosophies, there is a universal biological truth. Your body and your brain have a built-in mechanism for this.
And by understanding that biology, by recognizing how your vagus nerve and your brain networks actually operate, you can cut through all the noise.
You can confidently choose the methods that actually work for your specific life without worrying about the gatekeepers.
And as we wrap up, I really want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. A bit of a provocation, really, based on everything we've uncovered.
Oh, I love these. Let's hear it.
If the true essence of meditation is purely biological and universal, as this author suggests, well, what happens in the near future if we develop technology that can instantly trigger those exact biological changes?
Oh, wow.
Right. If we could create a neural device that bypasses the daily practice entirely and just flips that biological switch in your brain to shrink your amygdala and quiet your default mode network,
Yeah.
would it still be meditation? Or by skipping the deliberate, conscious practice, would we lose something vital in the shortcut?
Oh, that is a wild question to chew on. We started this whole conversation talking about how murky and confusing the landscape of the human mind can be. But it turns out we do have a structural map now.
We really do.
It's the biology. The biology shows us the exact underlying mechanisms, clear as day. What you choose to do with that clarity and how you choose to apply it to your own mind. Well, that is entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. And as always, keep questioning the world around you.